This book is the first military assessment of Netaji as a military leader and the military or the combat performance of the INA, the Indian National Army, of the Indian National Army. And I think I could do no better. The best tribute that any army can get is from its enemy. The best tribute that an army can get from its enemy. And the quote that I have in front of you is General Gracie, General Officer commanding 20 Indian Division, who fought the INA. He is talking to Colonel Prem Sehgal, who has been captured, who has just been captured. And he asks him, please listen to this, what did you mean, you people, by going on fighting? We had armor, artillery, you chaps had nothing. But instead of surrendering, you fought. It was madness. Why did you do it? Why didn't you come over? This is General Gracie, the British divisional commander, who incidentally later went on to be the chief of staff of the Pakistan Army. And while we were fighting in J&K, Gracie and our British Army chief were on daily, talk basis on the phone. Colonel Prem Sehgal replies, and this reply is worth hearing. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, of course it was madness. Colonel Prem Sehgal replied calmly, a revolutionary army general lives on the spirit of madness. So this question by the British commander who was his enemy and Prem Sehgal's reply shows you the spirit of the INA. It is the best tribute that the INA could ever have gotten. Ladies and gentlemen, we've all heard of the first War of Independence of 1857. It has been told to us with glee because it failed. Very few people have or know about that in 1946, there was a massive revolt in the Royal Indian Navy. 20,000 sailors on 89 ships had revolted, pulled down the Union Jack, thrown their British officers into the sea, and they had gone around the streets of Mumbai and Karachi with portraits of Netaji shouting Jai Hind. Thereafter, there was a revolt in the Royal Indian Air Force. And thereafter, there was a revolt in the British Indian Army at Jabalpur, my hometown. With that, the Brits saw the writing on the wall. They thought it was better to just pack their bags and leave. And they left within 1 year. This is the real true story of how you got your freedom. 1946, that was the military revolt that succeeded and actually sent the British, forced them to pack their bags. Because the simple fact, ladies and gentlemen, is that in 1946, 2.5 million Indian soldiers who had fought the Second World War were being demobilized. Demobilized means sent back home without pension. Okay? And they were not in the happiest frame of mind. And there were just 40,000 Gora Sipahis in India at that time. If these 2.5 million had all risen up in revolt and just thrown stones, that would have been the end of the British Indian Army. The British saw that writing on the wall and they left. And yet, we have been fed the fiction that just a dynasty, just one family and, its cohorts gave you freedom because of soft power, soul force, ahimsa. And the British wept tears at hearing about, your satyagraha and your soul force, and they just left because of that. So I have talked of Bose as an Indian samurai. Lost victories, the summer of 42, not that summer of 42, which some of us may have seen as teenagers. People tell us that it was a hopeless struggle. He didn't have a damn chance in hell. Negative. As a military historian, I'm telling you that the INA, and the Japanese army, the Imperial Japanese army, they were on a roll in 1942. They had conquered the whole of Malaya in a matter of 3 months. They had kicked the Brits out of Singapore. They had swept them out of Myanmar. And they were on the roll. 2 to 3 months ahead of time, they had reached the Indian border. And that is the time one of the staff officers of the Japanese Southern Army, he's recommended, it's all open, the door has been kicked down, let's get into India. And had they come in 1942, in March or April, they would have gone like a knife through butter. Ladies and gentlemen, they would have gone like a knife through butter. It's one of the greatest tragedies perhaps of history that the Japanese for some reason held back. They were hesitant. The Japanese headquarters in Tokyo was a bit hesitant. They were hesitant because they had pushed in their troops into China. That was a quagmire. I mean, it was an endless battle. They said a huge country like India, we don't want to get into an endless battle, so they hesitated. In August, the Quit India movement took place. Even Mahatma Gandhi. And let me also tell you, towards the end, ladies and gentlemen, though it is because of Mahatma Gandhi that Bose possibly left India. Because, after the second presidential attempt, I mean, he had been forced out. He was forced to quit by Gandhi. But towards the end, Bose and Gandhi were on the same page. And it was Nehru and the rest of the Congress Working Committee that had diverged. They were prepared to accept partition and they did not want to launch the Quit India movement. Then we had the retreat from Burma. People would have thought that in the retreat it was hopeless, it was all over. There would have been a rout. The British expected the INA to surrender in droves. This INA fought amazingly, tenaciously, without resources, because it was fired on the spirit of militant nationalism, the same motivating philosophy as was adopted by the German army, by the Imperial Japanese army. And then, of course, there is a retreat from Burma, and then he goes missing in action. We then go on to cover the legacy of Bose and nation state and nationalism in India. Just a quick word about this. What is the role of the INA and Netaji? What was the role of the INA? This was a force of 60,000 strong, divided into 3 divisions. Out of this 60,000 strong, ladies and gentlemen, 26,000 soldiers, officers, JCOs and men perished fighting to free India. Let me just, by way of comparison, tell you that from 1947 to date, you lost about 25,000 soldiers. From 1947 to date, you've lost 25,000 soldiers. 26,000 soldiers, 1/3 of this force died. This is huge casualties for any army to take. Impossible casualties for any army to take. Yet you call this a non-violent freedom struggle? Ladies and gentlemen, it's a slap in the face of each and every one of those men, officers, boys who died in trying to free India. And the simple fact is that today there is not a single memorial to the memory of these 26,000 soldiers who gave their lives for you. Yes, there is a India Gate, which is a memorial for the Indian soldiers who died fighting for the British in the First World War. For the First World War. You have just not been able to find the time and the resources to create a memorial for the Indian soldiers who have laid their lives after independence. So under that arch, you just create a bayonet, a very simple rifle with a bayonet upside down. And that's it. As far as these 26,000 soldiers are concerned, they were not only that there is not a memorial. The memorial created by the INA in Singapore was blasted by Mountbatten. Ladies and gentlemen, even when the odds were hopeless, the thing about this man Bose is that he never gave up. We all hear of EQ, emotional quotient, not IQ. Today it's EQ. And the guy with a high EQ is the guy who just doesn't give up. He tried in Germany, he failed, he came to Japan. He tried with Japan, he failed. He was not giving up. He said, I will go to Russia and continue this war. That is tenacity. That is willpower. That is, never say die. I will not give up. You see, that is the thing. And then comes the whole, they started the trial. They may have lost the battles of Kohima and Imphal, but the INA won the battle, the war for Indian independence. And Netaji had famously said, you see how prophetic he was, what a great visionary he was. He said, regardless of which side wins the Second World War, India will be free. The decision for Indian independence will be autonomous of the outcome of the Second World War. What prophetic words, which came true just 2 years later. So, ladies and gentlemen, as I was saying, you started the INA trials and 20,000 sailors revolted. Then the Royal Indian Air Force revolted in February 1946. And where the 1857 revolt had failed, the 1946 revolt of the Indian Armed Forces succeeded. And let me put it to you bluntly, you are free, courtesy the INA, you are free, courtesy the Indian Armed Forces. Please, let's have no doubts. And please correct our history. Because in the 600 pages of the history written by Bipin Chandra on the Indian freedom struggle, 600 plus pages, guess how many pages he has devoted to Netaji and the INA? 1.5. 1.5 out of 600. That is what we are crying about. That is what we are crying about. Ladies and gentlemen, this is some of the photographs of the ships that revolted. There was exchange of artillery fire with the British. It was not some kind of a joke, you see, and that is what got you free. So what happened to Bose? Where is Netaji? Ladies and gentlemen, as a military historian, as a scholar, I think it is essential for us to first develop the theory. What could have happened? You know, the Churchill had given orders to the Special Operations Executive, SOE, in 1943 to assassinate Bose. When Bose had escaped, they thought he would escape via Afghanistan to Iran, into Turkey, and then to Germany. And an assassination squad of the best people in the special services, the SAS, had been deputed to catch Bose on the way and kill him outside India so that nobody would be any the wiser. Right? These orders, by the way, were never withdrawn. There is a whole trove of information with the Ministry of Defense here. And the pity is that some of that, which has even been declassified, has not been taken much note of by scholars. We've been mostly looking at what the Home Ministry and the PMO gave us. And there you can see that the British intelligence was tracking Bose till the last minute of the war. They were aware of what his plans to go to Manchuria, right? And assassination squads had been put on his trail. And there was once when he was trying to get out of Burma, he was to come by air to Thailand. And at the last minute, the Japanese told him, don't. Your plane is likely to be shot down. So the fact is, one theory says that they shot down his plane. And very quietly, conveniently, it has all been covered up. So that is the second theory. The third theory is he reached Siberia. There is fair amount of credible evidence on this particular score that the air crash theory was just a deception plan. He reached Siberia. Initially, he was welcomed because the latest files that have been released in March this year, one of them tells you that there were 3 broadcasts that Bose made after reaching Siberia. He's supposed to have died on 18th August 1945 in that air crash, so-called air crash. Yet on 26th of December 1945, he comes on the air. He comes on the air again on 1st of January 1946. And the last time he's heard on radio, 31-meter band, recorded in Kolkata by the British, right? So the last time he comes on air is 19th of February 1946. So to that time, he was alive and he was talking of current affairs. He was talking of Pethick Lawrence's being sent to India to resolve this whole crisis. You see, so one theory is that, he had established, the Russian government, by the way, had recognized the Azad Hind government in exile. And they had been allowed to set up an embassy in Omsk in Siberia. In Omsk in Siberia, right? And that is where the Russian government had shifted during the Second World War to get out of the range of Hitler's bombers, right? And it is where he had sent Kato Kachu, the code name for his ambassador. And this is where Bose was trying to get to. And as per this theory, Bose got there, he got to Manchuria, he crossed over to the Russians. The Smersh, the Russian Soviet secret organization that used to look after border security, he surrendered to them, to Viktor Abakumov and to Colonel Utrikhin, right? And they took him to Siberia, from where he started his broadcasts. When the broadcasts were there, the Brits asked the Russians, my God, you got our biggest war criminal. There were two treaties, ladies and gentlemen, I hope very few of us are aware, between the MI5 and the NKVD, which is the precursor of the KGB, right? There were two treaties, one in November 1941 and the second in March 1944, to share intelligence and cooperate in covert operations. Under this treaty, the British, please hear this, the British asked the Russians, we don't want him back. We want you to keep him where he is. And a conjecture is that they asked to interrogate him. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope you know what is implied by the term interrogation. It means torture. As per one theory, he was tortured to death. He was tortured for whatever information he had on the INA, and at the end of it, he was executed using a plastic bag to strangle him to death and make his death look natural. The second theory is that he was imprisoned in Lesnevsky, in Siberian prisoner of war camp, where the top generals of the German and the Japanese army had been imprisoned, which is logical, because you imprison all top commanders together so that you can focus your interrogation teams there and collate or cross-check the information that is being given. So it is quite natural that he could have been taken there. Incidentally, the emperor, the last emperor of China, was also in this prisoner of war camp as one of Stalin's trophies. Stalin was collecting a whole lot of trophies towards the end of the war to see whose tail he could twist thereafter. And the other theory is, look, he was put in the prisoner of war camp. He was put on the labor camps, on the road of death, which was being constructed in Siberia, where thousands and thousands of Russians and other prisoners had died. The point is, what was the medical condition of Bose? How long could he have survived in prison in the Siberian climate, which is almost Siachen? He had suffered from tuberculosis because of ill treatment in the British prisons, right? So if you see his medical record and you ask doctors to opine, how many years do you give a person with this medical history in minus 35 degrees centigrade in Siberia, and then under harsh Soviet concentration camp, that kind of conditions? All right, we can draw our own conclusions. The last theory is, no, he survived. 53, Stalin died, and then all these prisoners were released. So he was released but not sent to India as per the agreement with the British. That he came here, he escaped, he was able to get his way back to India, but he lived here as the Gumnami Baba, who died at the ripe old age of about 85. Now look, before you start looking for something, you have to create your theories of what could have happened. Then you identify what would confirm this research hypothesis. Then you look for that information specifically. You can't just go around looking for a needle in a haystack. So you have to identify, where could I get this source of information? And the Mukherjee Commission had laughed it out of court. All right? There is no record of an air crash in Taiwan for 2 months previous, up and down. There's just one record of a C-47 Douglas Dakota aircraft which was carrying some American prisoners of war released, which crashed somewhere else, 200 miles somewhere else. There is no record. The whole theory is full of holes, right? So I will not even waste time discussing it. Why the British government has been so keen? Because the simple fact is, if you got him where you wanted, the Japanese had tried to help him to escape. The Kampetai had tried to help him to escape. And they had constructed a narrative, a deception plan. The British hijacked this deception plan. They said, excellent. He's dead for all purposes as far as the Indian people are concerned. Now this kind of a man can be captured, can be tortured, you can do anything, because he is supposed to be dead for all of us. And the pity is that none of us in this country ask the question, what have you done to get him back? If he is in Russia, what have you done to stop his torture? What have you done to get him back? They didn't want him back because somebody would have lost his top job. Somebody, ladies and gentlemen, would have lost the top job in this country if Bose had come back. So the motivations are patent and obvious. One hypothesis that we've been able to construct, I will not waste time on that, the air crash theory is absolute crap. The death certificate is about Ichiro Okura. You know, the death certificate supposed to be given for Bose is about a Japanese soldier, Ichiro Okura, who died of a heart attack. There is no record of a cremation. There is no record in Taiwan of an air crash. So let's not waste time. You know, the story is the aircraft fell from, nosedived from 1,000 to 1,500 feet, right? And there were 13 passengers in the aircraft, and out of them, miraculously, only the pilot, co-pilot, Bose and General Shedai died. So we asked why? Oh, you know, they were in front. And because it nosedived, therefore the guys in front died, and you know, the rest all survived miraculously from 1,500 feet, right? The next fact is it was a converted bomber. There were no seats, there were no seat belts. So when a plane goes like this, ladies and gentlemen, who's sitting in front and who's sitting back? Everybody, the guys in the back would fall further onto metal, and they are more likely to get killed than the guys right up front. All right? Kampetai and Field Marshal Terauchi, he is the Southern Army commander. These are the instrumental people who helped Bose to escape. Right? He escapes in a Mitsubishi modified bomber of the Kampetai, which is the Japanese intelligence agency. They used to use these modified bombers to drop agents behind enemy lines. Habibur Rahman was deputed to spread the air crash theory as part of the deception plan. Bose and Lieutenant General Shedai of the Japanese army. General Shedai, incidentally, was a Russian-speaking Japanese officer who was tasked to help him negotiate with the Russians and surrender to the Russians, right? They are supposed to have proceeded to Tokyo and then to Dairen. Prince Takeda, he is the head of the Kampetai in Manchuria. He handled the escape operation of Bose. Bose had written a letter to Jacob Malip, Soviet ambassador in Tokyo, already established his embassy, as I told you. Japanese surrendered Manchuria 22nd August 45. Bose crossed the border with General Shedai 23rd August. Nehru was informed of this in December 1945 by one of the agents who sent the letter, and on the testimony of Shyamlal Jain, the chap who typed that letter, he straight away wrote a letter to Clement Attlee. Your war criminal is in Russia. Please do what you think is correct. This is what you do to the man who actually got you your freedom. General Kolesnikov, he is one of the GRU, Russian military intelligence people, met our parliamentary delegation and told them that he had personally seen letters stating that in August 1946, the Politburo was debating what to do with Bose. You have reached this far. So, ladies and gentlemen, the answers lie in the files of the Kampetai in Japan. The answers lie in the files of the Soviet army operations in Omsk and of the great strategic operation towards Manchuria. The answers lie in Stalin's personal archives in Moscow, which are there, and I think we will have to press them. The answers are with the MI5. They are saying they'll declassify, only after 100 years are over, etc., etc. We will have to press them for these answers, and then we'll have to see which of these four theories they fit. My personal, with the Gumnami Baba thesis, my personal point of difference is just these three. The Mukherjee Commission report 120, 121 says that the DNA test was done of the teeth of Gumnami Baba with the parental side and the maternal side of Bose. The DNA does not match. One. Number two, I would say the medical evidence. How long would Bose have survived under imprisonment conditions in Siberia? Three, the character of Bose. Here was a person who the empire was not able to cow down when it was at the peak of its power. In a free India, he would have come and kept quiet. This is out of character. So what was it that was making him keep quiet? Was he tortured and reduced to a vegetable? I've seen it happen to people. So what? So it's still open and out there. Clinching evidence would come. Clinching evidence would come once we get the Russian archives and the British MI5 files. And so help us God. I think the truth concerns us all. Who are we as a people? What depths can we sink to? How you have sold yourself, even after independence, how you have kept reporting to your British masters is disgraceful. But at least it will help us to come to terms with ourselves.